and welcome to UC Today. My name is Christian McCann, and today's session is why native mobile UC delivers better experience and engagement. And joining me to tell me all about it is Lee Essex, SVP Global Sales and Marketing at Tango Networks. So, Lee, deskless workers represent 80% of the workforce but receive only 1% of enterprise technology investment. What's driving this massive imbalance, and why should B2B tech companies care about fixing it now?
I think unified communication strategy investment is always been based around the desk. Behind the desk with a computer, with a desk phone sat there was how we worked. Now, this changed dramatically during the pandemic. We know this, but it wasn't done in a strategic, thought-out way. It was very, very reactionary. So all of a sudden, we had a requirement for a flexible working solution. So various applications were rolled out, but they were rolled out quickly. There was no thought behind it. People had to solve problems, and they had to solve them quickly. Now, the knock-on effect from that is that working habits have changed permanently. And as you state, actually, most work is happening out in the field. It's on a shop floor, it's in a vehicle, people in the field, across a campus. And the outcome is that people are just not using desk phones. They're reaching for and they want to use the device that they all know on a daily basis, an hourly basis, and that's that mobile phone. And it's a misalignment, and it's created a gap in the experience, the visibility, control. So if mobility is not a native part of the UC stack, the UC stack is incomplete. And what's happened is people have just been reverting back to their standard mobile phone. So there's no spend there. They're using their own personal mobile phones, or they're using a company provided phone. So there's no spend, there's no investment. But this is having a huge impact. There's a result in lost productivity. There's no trust between customers and suppliers and relations, because they're receiving calls from numbers they just don't recognize. And if you don't recognize a number, you don't trust it. Companies have just not invested in it because it's not been seen an issue. I think with this greater flexibility in work, it's now becoming an issue. But the big thing we've got to focus here is this lack of investment is having a huge impact on, number one, the engagement of employees who don't have the right tools, but also the experience of both the employee and the customer and the partner and the supplier that are having to deal with these calls from unknown numbers.
Indeed. Well, many companies believe that they've solved a lot of issues of this mobile conundrum by extending their desktop UC app to the mobile phone of their employees. Why isn't this approach working, and what are the consequences of it?
UC apps on a phone, they just create friction. From a user point of view, people just don't want to go through the having to open another app to make a call. They're used to making a call using the native dialer, the green button on their phone. That's the user experience. So what happens is organizations are rolling out these UC apps. They're expecting their employees to use them, but in reality, people aren't using them. And that's one side of things, that's user experience. The second is that any application that's on the phone is best efforts. And the reason for that is it's data. So when you look at how a mobile network works, data is best efforts. Data is packets, it can be reassembled. Actually, voice is critical. Voice has to be delivered in a high quality, real-time manner. So mobile networks will always give a voice call priority over data session. And what does this mean? It results in poor quality calls being made over apps. I think we've all tried to make a call over an app, and we've had a jittery experience or poor quality call. So we stop using it and we go back to the native dialer. There's been lots of investigation and reports on this, and they say around 6% of people are still using an app 3 months after they've deployed them. So what does this mean? It means that IT have essentially lost control. They're back to square one. The obvious answer is native mobile integration. If you embed the native mobile experience, the green button, into the UC endpoint and make the phone a managed UC endpoint, Every call has a business identity because it's being driven by the identity that's been given to the employee by the UC platform. It follows the existing enterprise routing and the policies, and all of this without you having to change the behavior of the person who's doing it. They're still doing exactly what they've always done: pick up the phone, make a call. So unfortunately, again, it was a reaction. Roll out an app. If I'm in great Wi-Fi, it's brilliant. But even if I'm sat there with 5 bars of 5G and I'm in a crowded area, that voice call's always going to get priority. So we've got to go native, not over the top.
Well, when there is this massive experience, this technical gap between the desk and the field, what happens to the customer experience and the knock-on with operational efficiency?
If a customer, and I put myself in front of a customer, if I'm receiving a call from an unknown number, a mobile number, I just don't trust it. We all get these calls on our phones nowadays, and we don't recognize the number, and we let it go to voicemail, or we get suspected spam that pops up on our phone. So these numbers are going unanswered, ignored, they're not being returned. Having a consistent number presentation in line with a company's fixed line numbering has an immediate and immeasurable effect on this. When people see a number that they recognize, a consistent identity, they trust it. From an operational point of view, if you can't optimize what you can't see, if calls are happening on siloed mobile phones that are not inside the UC stack, IT and operations just can't monitor them. So if you can't monitor them, the calls are not being recorded, they're not being routed. And this is breaking all of the workflows that have been put in place with unified communications. It's producing data fragmentation. You've got these huge data silos where you can't, especially in the modern AI world where we're monitoring all of these voice transactions, you can't monitor them if they're outside of your platform. And if we look at what's happening now with branded caller IDs, we're going into a world driven by the US where actually when I get a call, it's going to have essentially a green tick on it. It's your bank calling you. It's been through a verification process. It pops up on there. That's not going to happen with a siloed mobile communication. So the impact on customers, and in that I include suppliers and partners, is immediate. They're getting a call from a trusted ID that they will answer and they'll respond to. And the impact from an operational aspect is that they can see it. So if they can see it, they can control it.
So just collecting all the thoughts we've talked about when staff use these UC apps and the issues with that, what communication solutions, when they're extended to deskless workers, what do they have to include to address the issues of, unverified caller ID, not intuitive? If you could explain.
Integrating mobile fully into the UC stack is not difficult. We've made that easy with Tango Extend. So actually taking the native mobile experience and integrating that directly into your existing UC stack is already there. So to go through the process of bringing that in is not a technology challenge now. It is straightforward. It's simply a strategy. So you've got to bring native mobile voice into the UC platform, not over the top. It's got to be rooted via the UC platform so it's reliable. And once it's reliable and it's easy to use, it will get used. People will use it. Giving that true business identity on the mobile so that when staff, field workers, frontline workers are making outbound calls and they're presenting a company number, will make a huge difference to the way that customers are engaged, the experience they're going through. And having that centralized policy. You haven't got siloed communications, mobiles that are out of control of IT. They've now got this simple, straightforward policy that applies to fixed line and mobile communications that they can control from a central area. And this includes any reporting, any recording, any auditing that wants to be done by the business, which is hugely important, particularly in the regulated businesses. And again, with the advancements that we're seeing in voice analytics, it allows you to take samples and analyze all of the communications. And if we go back to the first question, 80% of these communications are happening outside of the UC platform. It means that without fully integrated native mobile, you're only actually sampling 20% of your call data. So that's a huge gap that needs to be bridged and solved.
So, looking at the picture as a whole, when companies are able to provide the tools mentioned for their frontline workforce, what does that transformation look like for businesses?
It's huge. I speak to a lot of CIOs, and by adding native mobility, the transformation is across the board. You're going from user experience for both the employee, you've got better engagement with the employee because they're getting the correct tools. And again, there's lots of research out there that says if you give your employees the right tools, they feel better engaged. The new generation, Gen Z, as we refer to them, coming into the workplace, are used to using their mobile phone. So let's give them the tools that they're used to using. It makes them feel more engaged and involved. But it goes further than that. You're reducing your costs. So your contracts, mobile and fixed line, are being combined and streamlined. You can get rid of any company provided phones. No desk phones are needed anymore. No company provided mobiles, because you're allowing people simply to deploy a very secure second line on their own device. And I don't think anybody wants to carry two phones around at the moment. And again, modern AI world, all of that data, that potential data lake that you're missing, is being brought into a single controlled, measurable area. And once you do all of this, the result is that UC actually becomes truly unified. You haven't got this missing puzzle out there. So you get the higher engagement from the frontline workers. You get the better and more consistent experience for customers. And again, back to that simple architecture that includes fixed line and mobile that the IT guys can control and essentially defend.
So there's seems to be many benefits to this. Companies listening to this may be wanting to take the first steps. What would you recommend?
Go and speak to your workforce, audit them, work out how many deskless teams you've got, how people are actually communicating. Are they using personal phones? Are they expected to use apps on personal phones? Are they actually using them? Get some real life experiences. I think IT departments and CIOs will actually be quite amazed by the responses they get here. Obviously, when you're getting this information in, prioritize any regulated or brand critical roles. Regulated has got to be done. The calls have got to be monitored, measured, and available for recording. But brand critical roles, and that's anybody who's field based, sales and marketing are the obvious ones, who are making calls out to customers where you want to present that known trusted identity. Prioritize those folks first. But importantly, when you're looking at your UC strategy, start with mobility and then work from there. You can't expect people to use desk phones or apps that you give them. You've got to expect that they want to use the tool that's next to them, that they use every day. So simple things: do an audit, do some priorities, but first and foremost, start with mobility in your UC strategy.
Excellent. That's a good place to leave it. Lee, thank you very much for joining us.
No problems. Thank you.
And thank you to the audience for watching. As usual, please don't forget to like and share. And also don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up to date with all our latest videos. This has been UC Today. Until next time.